See if it. Nope, it didn't turn. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Wednesday Live. Um, I've been doing this for a couple of months, and even though it's been that long, I still seem to have trouble with cameras. But nevertheless, I'm here and ready to talk about a little bit more about hollowing. And this week, what I'm going to do. Last week, I covered some of the smaller tools that you would use for getting started in hollowing, hollow turning, whatever. But this week, we're going to talk about some of the tools that you use to make bigger things. Like this is one of the larger hollow forms that I've worked on. It's actually a big vase, and this is about 14 inches tall. They started out 14 inches in diameter as well, and you can't exactly hollow something like this with the small tools that we had that I showed you last week. So to move up to something this size, you got to move up to bigger tools, and also for safety's sake, you need to have some other accessories really to help facilitate turning something this size. So I'm not sure if looking over here, let's see. Okay. So anyway, so today that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about making big things. Like one thing I didn't really realize is how big this stuff was. So I'm kind of like, buried behind all this stuff. But anyway, here's another example of a large hollow form vase. So things like this, you really gotta, you need the bigger tools and you need those accessories, because when something this big starts to have a problem on the lathe, it can go poorly very quickly. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So anyway, yeah. So this one right here, I'm actually in the process of working on this. You can see, I don't know how well you'll be able to see it because it's so far away, but there's quite a few cracks in here. I'm actually entertaining the idea of putting some bow ties in it, but anyway, this one was turned green, obviously, and the plan is to remount it and turn it a little bit thinner and clean up some of these artifacts here. Maybe fill it a little bit, whatever. And this one I turned a long time ago, and this is probably about a year and a half ago. And I did the same thing. I turned it rough while it was green. You can see that there's some warping that's happened, maybe. Not sure if the camera will show that. But that was kind of what I wanted. I kind of wanted something that was going to be not quite perfect. And I went back and I filled a couple of these little places where it cracked with some black CA and things like that. But anyway, so let's get on to talking about the kind of tools we need to work on these things. So I'm going to start with something that's kind of familiar from last time. Actually, you know what? What I'm going to start with are holding. So I'm going to start off by sharing some of these chucks. So I have this is the Nova Titan. I'm going to switch cameras. I'm going to try something different with this thing. I have a GoPro on a gooseneck, so I can kind of like move it around to show you what I want to show you. So we'll see how this goes. So this is the Nova Titan 3 chuck. And this is a pretty heavy duty thing. I mean, it's pretty big. It's very heavy. And it's got all of the jaws that are made specifically for it are very large, and they have very large dovetails. Some of them have serrated jaws on the inside. And this is going to provide a good hold for a large hollow form blank. And you definitely want to have it mounted on the chuck as securely as you can. You'll also notice that these jaws actually have 3 screws holding each jaw face on. Now you may also notice that it's all rusted. That's because the last time I used it for green turn. I used it to turn something green. In fact, I think it was that big sycamore vase that I showed from a year ago. And so this is something that you have to be aware of. If you're going to be turning green stuff, you got to coat it with wax or something if you're going to leave it on there long term, because it can cause some surface rust on your chuck. But anyway, so this is the Titan 3. Now, this isn't absolutely necessary, and definitely if you don't have a full-size lathe, I would not recommend it because it is very heavy, and it would be very hard on your bearings if you were trying to use this on anything less. Never mind the fact that it's comes standard with an 1.25" 8 thread size, so that would limit the smaller lathes that you could put it on. But anyway, never fear if you don't have one of these. No big deal. This is a Nova. This is a Supernova 2 chuck, also from Nova, and these are the power grip jaws. And these are basically 100mm jaws, but they're much deeper. And they have the dovetail on the top. Let's see if I can show that profile. They have the dovetail profile on the top, right there. And they also have serrated teeth in the bottom. So you could actually use this either with a dovetail or with a straight tenon. And these, the serrated teeth will grab it at the bottom. And this is plenty strong enough to hold any size hollow form that you're going to put on your lathe. You really don't have to have a Titan, although it's nice to have if you can get it. So you can also use, you don't actually have to have these jaws either. You could also use the 100mm or the 130. The main thing is what you want to have a good, a good surface area that your tenon covers a good surface area, a good percentage of the diameter of the overall piece that you're turning, to make sure that you have a good hold on it, because the forces at play once you start turning that thing can get out of hand pretty quickly. So let's see, what are we going to talk about next? So I guess the next thing we're going to talk about are tools, right? So I'm going to move this up a little bit so we can kind of see. So all of the tools are, well, as you can see, they're very large tools. So these are the Easy Woods, which is, you'll recognize these kind of from last week because we talked about the smaller version. These are the Pro Series hollowing tools. I'm proud to say that I was actually part of the team who helped to develop these tools, so I'm pretty proud of that fact. But this one is the one that I'm most happy with. I mean, I'm happy with all of them, but this is the #1 Pro Hollower. And the really nice thing about this is you can see just how wide this bar is right here. So it allows you to overhang by quite a bit. And EasyWood even puts a little marker on here to tell you where the maximum overhang is. So you can see that from there to the end, it's probably a good, I'd say that's a good 8 or 9 inches that you can overhang the tool over the tool rest. It may even be more than that. Let's see if I got a tape measure around here. Maybe I'll get one later and I'll measure it so you can see. But it's actually, it's a good distance there. So you can get really deep down into your hollow form without worrying about the tool bending or anything like that. And it's probably about a little more than a 1/2 inch thick this way. So good sturdy tool. Now these are the other 2 EasyWood tools, the EasyWood hollowers, the Pro hollowers. So the thing about these, they're really good tools. I would recommend them, but the limitation for these is how far they can extend out over the rest. So from my finger here to the tip is about as far as you can go. So, and you really don't want to exceed the manufacturer's recommendation for hanging out over the rest. So these are really great for doing large hollow forms as long as you don't have to reach too deeply inside. Now, the other thing to note about that is these curve tools are really intended for the top part of your hollow form. So I'll bring this behemoth back into view here. So really what we're talking about is we're talking about working on the inside of this area right here. Okay, so it doesn't really require a really long reach as far as the curve tools go. And once you get down about this far, typically you can go back in there with the straight tool and you can hollow out the rest of it. You can go back in with the number 1 and you can hollow out the rest. In fact, the number 3 is best for this area up here. And then the number 2 is for this area right in there. And then the number 1 is for hollowing out the bottom. So you can do a reasonably deep vessel, but there are limitations. As you can see, let's see if I can show this. So if I'm looking at this, this is the maximum overhang line right here, approximately at the rim, and you can see that it only comes down about here, which would leave several inches that I'm not able to safely get to with this. The thing to remember about any tool really is it's intended to do a certain thing, and all hollowing tools aren't intended to do deep, really deep hollowing. So it's not a negative about the EasyWood tools. They're great tools. I just don't want to put that kind of connotation out there. Now we get on to talking about the tools that are made for deep hollowing. So I'm going to go ahead and adjust this one because this one's adjustable. This is the Ultima from Robert Sorby. And as you can see, this is a very large tool. Okay? And on the end of it, it's got an articulating head. We slide some of this over so I can talk about this thing. It's got an articulating head, which allows you to adjust the amount of curvature that you have available in your, which allows you to adjust the amount of curvature you have to work with. I actually added an additional link because originally it only came with 2, and I found that it basically made a V shape. So when it comes up here, you had one link you could go that far, and then the other one basically you could just make a V shape. And really what I like to do is I like to keep the cutter in line with the handle, and because it was making a V shape, I really couldn't do that. And when I did do that, it didn't provide very much space. So if you could imagine this piece missing and this was here, it would go right there. So it wouldn't give me much room as far as reaching around underneath the shoulder. So I added that extra link. Anyway, the other thing you'll notice about this is a cup cutter. So there's really 2 types of cutters that I've seen. Well, there's probably more than that, but the systems that I have, they employ 2 different types of cutters. This is a cup cutter. This is actually a high-speed steel cup cutter, and the top of this has, I don't know if I brought the right wrench over here. The top of this has it's called a hood. See if I can get it closer so you can see. It's called a hooded cutter, and basically what happens is this hood right here, it prevents the tool from taking too big of a cut, because these cup cutters can be very aggressive. All right. So the other system I have doesn't have a cup cutter, and we'll talk about the proper way to present it to the wood. But this one keeps it from taking too big of a bite by controlling it with this hood here that slides back and forth to allow more or less of the cutter to be exposed. And with it being a round cutter, you can also, when you sharpen it, or when you're using it, if it gets dull, you can loosen it. And you only cut on about a third of it, so you can rotate it 2 times before you have to sharpen it. Now with this tool, you can actually sharpen it in the device. So you just take a diamond card and pass it, around the edge. And there's also a jig that you can buy as an accessory that you could take it off and take it to a grinder, such as the Robert Sorby Pro Edge. And then this one also can be, one really nice thing about this one is it can be adjusted. So I can come down here to the handle. Let's see. I had a whole bunch of these Allen keys all over the place. So it can be adjusted depending on what part of the vessel you're working on. So when you're working on the top shoulder piece, you don't have to have all this tool hanging out when you're working on, when you don't need it. So that's nice. And then also it's got a threaded spot here, and you can actually add a handle. Let me go grab that. Forgot to bring that over. Okay. So you can actually add a handle and thread that right into the side. And this is what you use to stabilize the tool. So you can either use it like this, or you can rotate it around and tighten it up, and you can use it like that, because really you need to have some sort of way to control the rotational force, particularly if you have this extended out and you're deep into a hollow form. You really got to have some kind of means to resist the rotational forces. And the other two systems that I'm going to show you, that's where those jigs come in handy, because they pretty much take all of the rotational force out. So before I get into those, I'm going to talk, speaking of countering rotational forces and all that, I'm going to talk about this behemoth. All right. This, and I don't know how well I'm going to be able to show it because it's really big. Let's move some of this stuff back. See if I can get it in the shot. So this is the Carter Products Multi-Rest, and this is a steady rest. And what this is for is you hold everything you hold on the lathe, you hold from the end, right? So as you're turning, let's see if I have something small that I can use. I'll just use this little piece of an acorn here. So if you're holding it from the end, right, and you're hollowing it in the middle, the further out you get from the chuck, the easier it is, the more leverage that you have over the piece. And unfortunately, cutting on, sometimes especially if you're getting a little aggressive with it, you can present enough force that you can literally pull your piece out of the chuck, because all of your support's back here, and the further you get away from the truck, the less leverage the material has, and the more leverage kind of that you have. So what you need to do is you need to bring that support, instead of just supporting it at the end, you need to bring that support out so that you can support your work closer to where you're cutting. That's where this comes in. Now, in the past, I've made my own steady rest, and making your own is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. You can make it. I've seen lots of people make it out of plywood with, these wheels from like a roller blade or a roller skate or something. And there's nothing wrong with that. But the nice thing about this is it's very modular. So I can take this one and I can easily switch it from one lathe to the other in the case that you have more than one. You can also use it on your MIDI lathes because it's adjustable here at the base. A couple of other things is the modular aspect of it that I was talking about before. You can actually remove about 2/3 of this. So this knob here and this knob here, you can remove those, and you can remove this entire part so that you actually don't have to remove your piece from the lathe. You can actually slip this onto the lathe around your piece, which is nice, because most of the time if it's made out of plywood and it's got the one ring, you can't do that. You can also move these wheels around wherever you need them. So also when you have this the 2/3 off, you can put 2 of these in the back, and you can use it as a bowl steady to support a bowl. If you're turning a thin bowl and you needed support on the backside, you could also use it for that. So I made the decision to go this way because I sold my old lathe, and I sold the rest that came with it, and it no longer fit any of the other lathes because it was made to fit that one particular one. So the modularity of this thing really makes it nice, and it's very rigid, being made out of metal versus the plywood. And this is super important whether you make one or you buy one. This is really, really important for doing large hollow forms. So either a steady rest or this multi-rest, one of those two things is definitely should be on your list of things to get. All right, so let's get this out of the way. Okay. And now I'm going to talk about these two hollowing systems. So these are actually hollowing jigs or hollowing systems. This is an articulating arm system here. And I don't know if I have the right, yeah, I do. So basically the way this works is this part gets mounted onto the lathe, and this is the block that you use to lock it to the bedways. But essentially what this does is this arm here, this articulating arm, it takes away the rotational forces from the tool. So you're not trying to fight the tool and keep it. You're not trying to fight with the tool when you have this much steel hanging out over the rest. And this one's nice because it articulates and you can move it all over the place. And that was the one that I went with originally. This one actually also has a laser on it. So this is getting really big for this to show on the camera, but we'll just go along with it. So anyway, it has a laser on it, and what the laser does is the laser tells you how thick. Let's see if I can show that. You can set the laser to show where how thick your piece wants to be. You want your piece to be. So if you want the walls to be 1/8 of an inch, then typically what I'll do is I'll put a piece of paper under here and I'll make a mark at 1/8 of an inch, and then you basically just take this laser point and you set it up so that it's 1/8 of an inch outside the cutter, and that way you always know where you are when you're inside the hollow form. And basically what will happen is the little red dot will fall off the edge of the hollow form when you reach your desired wall thickness. Now, as I was talking about the cup cutters before, this one is the other one that uses the cup cutter. Now this one is carbide. See if I can get closer so you can see. So this is a cup cutter, and this one's not really intended to be sharpened, and it is super aggressive if you present it horizontally. So what you actually have to do is you have to present it at I think it's like a 15-degree angle to the work so that it's not so aggressive. And the nice thing about using it in this system is that once you put it in here, you can rotate it and lock it down with these lock screws, and it'll hold it there. So the only thing that you have to worry about at that point is just removing the material. So you would set your tool rest here for additional support, and then you could just use this and go in and make all your cuts and things and hollow out your piece. And that works okay. And I have to be honest, I bought this maybe like 2 years ago, and I don't know that I've been 100% pleased with it. I haven't spent a whole lot of time using it, but the couple of times that I did use it, I wasn't super thrilled with it. The first the Sycamore hollow form that I showed you, I used this system in conjunction with the EasyWood tools to hollow that out, and it did work because I was able to hollow that vessel out. But I don't know, I just didn't feel like it was sturdy enough. And again, it could be my usage, but I just didn't feel like it was robust enough. So take that for what it's worth. And this is the Harrison System Simple Hollowing System. So let me set that aside, and we're going to talk about the last one. and that is the Carter hollow roller system. And this one has the most pieces out of all of these. Let me take this screw off. So the way this one works is this is the accessory tool rest that comes with it. And this roller guide fits into your banjo. And what this does, see if I remember correctly, the two go in the back. So let me move this out of the way. So basically what happens is this bar, which solves one of my complaints for the Harrison system, this bar is 3/4 of an inch, where the Harrison bar is 5/8. So it's a much sturdier bar, and it slides in between these rollers, and that takes out the rotational force. So I can't rotate it while it's in there. So that takes out the rotational forces. Same way that the articulating arm did for the other one. Now, this one actually uses a different type of cutter. This is, I don't know what the official name for it is, but the Robert Sorby multi-tip tool that I showed you last week also uses the same type of cutter. And I have to say this worked really, really well. I used this on the oak hollow form with the live edge, and it worked surprisingly well. Not that I didn't expect it to, but it worked really, really well, and I was very happy with it. The stoutness of the bar and the simplicity with which I could sharpen this cutter. Basically, what you do is you take a diamond card. Let's see, I think I have one right here. You take a diamond card and you set it flat on top of the blade, on top of the cutter, and make a couple of passes, and you're back at it. So that worked really well, and the fact that it's you're able to rotate it also helps with getting under the shoulder of your of the top of your hollow form. I would imagine that if it was a really sharp, I don't know what the right word is, but a really sharp curve at the top, or a really flat curve at the top, I should say, you may need to get a bar that has a swan neck in it. And I believe Carter has, I think they offer something like that, but with most of these tools, you can use a variety of other bars with it. So this thing, you just loosen it up, and it slides right out, and it's a 5/8 inch bar. Now, as far as adding things to this one, I'm not sure about that, because this has a flat, and this flat is integral to the system, whereas this articulating arm system is just a round tang, so I could put any kind of bar in there that I want. In fact, I have a bar that I had a friend of mine make. He put a little swan neck on. I'll just get it. It's easier to talk about it. So this is the one that my friend made for me, and it was longer, but I found that it vibrated too much, so I went ahead and cut off a little bit off the end. And like I said, you know, when you're dealing with these swan neck tools, you really aren't reaching that deep into the hollow form anyway. But with this nice sweep on it, and the fact that I have this scraper cutter on the end that I can rotate by loosening and loosening the screw and repositioning it, I can go ahead and get underneath the shoulder of my hollow forms and hollow them out. And this works out really great. And I can just slip this in here and tighten my set screws. Now, one thing I did have to do that maybe you can see that right here, is I had to put a little flat on there, because the thing is, when you're cutting, you know, there's a lot of rotational forces happening here, and basically what was happening was it was starting to roll itself over inside the holder. So by putting those flats on there, I was able to have a positive location for the ends of my set screws, and just that little bit of grinding made all the difference in the world and stopped the rotating of the bar. So, and this is just, as far as I know, this is just 5/8 inch steel round bar, and my friend heated it and shaped it like this for me, and put a flat on the end, tapped it, and we were able to put this this cutter in there. So for those of you that like to make your own tools, you know, there's room for that even uh, in these cases. So I think that just about. Oh, actually, I have one more tool to show you before I wrap that up, and it's not a huge one, but let's see. And I showed you the small. I think I showed you the small version last week also. See if I can find them. So I showed you the small version of these two tools last week. And this is the multi-tip tool, and you'll notice that this is the same kind of cutter that I have on my carder, on the carder bar. So it has the little stainless steel stick, for lack of a better term, for hollowing. And it also comes with a teardrop shaped blade, which I have right here, which you can use as a scraper, as a shear scraper, and you can use it to clean up the inside of your hollow forms. But as you can see, this bar isn't very long, so you can't reach in very far. But it is made to do your larger hollow forms. Very useful. And this is the Robert Sorby Turnmaster, which is basically the same tool. It is a substantial tool. It's actually very heavy, and it has the sweep neck. It has the swan neck in it, and that same type of cutter. And actually, I have another one of these arms that will actually fit this, so I could actually use this with this system also. And you could use this on a regular handle. You could use it with this handle right here, and you can use that to go in and clean up under the shoulder. Let me see if I got any questions over there. Let's see. Nope, no questions. So that pretty much does it for this one. I know it's a little bit shorter than usual. Next week, I'm going to do a little bit of hollowing. I'm going to try to set up actually, let me switch cameras, make it easier. I'm going to be setting up a hollow form so that I can, I'm not really sure. At this point, I'm not really sure exactly how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to try to set up a hollow form so that I can use let's see, I can use a variety of these different tools set up on the lathe so I can actually show you how they work. And probably also a little small piece as well, so I can show you some of the stuff, some of the techniques with the smaller tools. So next week, we should have a project instead of me just sitting here talking about tools. But I hope that this was helpful. I know that there's a lot of information out there, and particularly if you're... Oh, wait a minute. Okay. I think something happened with my other camera. It doesn't seem to be turned on. But anyway, going back to what I was saying, I know there's a lot of information out there, and there's a lot of tools, and it's hard to make decisions on what you should what you should invest in. And I'm hoping that these videos can kind of help you to make those decisions, so that you don't end up buying a bunch of things that you don't need. Like I said, this right here is not representative of all the hollowing tools that are available on the market, but this is a good selection of different systems. Like, for instance, this as far as wood turning jigs go, most of them are going to be either articulating arm or some kind of captured bar system. So I have both of those represented here. I have the carbide options, as well as some of the high-speed steel handheld options, and some of the handheld options I have represented here, so you can kind of use that. So anyway, so I don't think I put the monitor too far away. I can't really see it. But it doesn't look like I have too many questions. And if you guys don't have any questions, I guess I'll go ahead and wrap it up and let you guys get back to whatever it is that you're going to do today. Let's see. So I'm gonna run through the comments real quick. Just man, Midnight Joker, that stinks, man. I bet you were pretty bummed about missing out on the Carter on that Carter system. Let's see. And Betty, I'm glad I could provide. I'm glad I can provide this information to you. You know, I will. Oh, I did a show this weekend in Columbia, and I was talking to one of the folks that were there. And here's some advice that's good for anybody. Um, in in wood turning, there's a lot of options for tools and accessories and things like that. And a good way to avoid um, buying things that you don't necessarily need is to find what? Hmm. Okay, guys, I'm gonna have to cut this one short. So sorry about that. I got something going on outside. So yeah. So I hope you guys enjoyed the information. Remember to get out in your shops, make a mess, have fun, dread not, and make something. Peace. Sorry to have to bolt on you like that.